In today's lesson, we're going to talk about why punchers beat pressure fighters, and we're going to highlight the skills necessary to do this in one of my favorite fights of all time, a showcase of how to be a good puncher, which is George Foreman versus Joe Frazier. Let's get into it. See, round one, Frazier's bouncing, he's ready to rock, he sets a pace. Foreman immediately comes out and he rips a big right hand low. The shot isn't meant to land, but it's meant to establish a credible threat. Not only is he throwing big right hands, but he's throwing unusual punches and he's occupying that low level. He's letting Joe know that he can't hang out there safely. A beautiful frame right off the bat. When Joe misses, you can see George Foreman compromises his posture. It happens again right here. When Joe gets down, George doesn't want to wait for him to bounce up again, so he pushes him back. He pushes him off base. You see this a lot with Dutch kickboxers, specifically from that golden age of kickboxers, where you can out-position somebody or you can off-position somebody. You can compromise their base, compromise their posture, compromise their balance, and not let them have access to their skill set, effectively neutering them in range so that you can build offensive momentum. There it is again, pulls him through. For a big guy, George plays an excellent matador. You can see Frazier tries to put his head in George's chest, and he pulls him through, and he pulls him through again. Beautiful work. Again, that right hand low, that's a scary thing when you're a bobber and a weaver like Frazier is, because you can't just lean down to your right side over and over again. Otherwise, guys are gonna lead, they're gonna anticipate that, they're gonna punch where you're gonna go, and they're gonna corner you on your back leg and your back hip. You have to slip to your left at least enough to create ambiguity about where you're gonna go. And every time you do that, it's risky because you're passing through your opponent's cross lane. I wouldn't wanna be in George Foreman's cross lane. George recognizes that threat and he establishes it early. Beautiful frame, beautiful catch in the elbow and then creating traffic on the way out. You can see here, he turns him from the shoulder. He turns him from the elbow. He frames with both hands to create traffic, you know? Whether my hands are here in an opponent's jab and cross lane or here in an opponent's jab and cross lane, they're still obstructing that shot. Principles, not just techniques. Good, and Frazier's trying to find his rhythm. He's trying to bob and weave. But in boxing, Foreman knows what goes down must come back up. When Frazier goes down, he's loading to spring up. He's looking for that same side counter off of both sides. And Foreman doesn't want to let him get up. So when he misses a shot, he recovers by framing on the shoulder or framing on the neck or pushing Joe out of position. There it is again, beautiful matador work. He establishes a control on the neck and the elbow. Beautiful job pairing those hooks and uppercuts. And again, his exit strategy is just to compromise the smaller man's position and balance. Another clever tactic from George. You can see with that 1-2-3, he throws that 1-2 high, and then he just owns that whole low level with that big sweeping 3. What he's doing is he's slowly corralling Joe into having to fight him tall on the line, a fight that Joe will lose. Great traffic on both sides. There it is again. You're seeing all of the principles that we've talked about on display here. Talk about a dynamic guard. A guard isn't a passive thing. A guard isn't, my hands are here, or my hands are here, or my hands are here. I'm a half guard guy. I'm a high guard guy. No, your guard is dynamic and it needs to move and it's suited to any situation you encounter. George does a great job with this. I'm not even a big fan of young George Foreman, but you can see all the pieces that come together for George Foreman's comeback when he's older, to get a lot of mileage out of less, to do less and get more out of it. Very efficient style from George. Beautiful. Beautiful. See how he's disincentivizing Joe from using that head movement, from finding his rhythm. He's breaking him down. I talk a lot. You can defend shots or you can disincentivize shots. You can defend shots or you can disincentivize behavior so they don't even get started. This is as good as boxing gets because Frazier is no slouch. And you can see that sequence there was very telling. Frazier's just popping up and down because every time he lets his weight slide side to side, George knocks him off balance. And you can see he doesn't want to go down too far. He doesn't want to hinge. He doesn't want to drop step in like he usually does because Frazier has owned that low level with offense. He's made that place hazardous and scary and unpredictable. So he's slowly funneling Frazier into fighting him on the line. I wouldn't want to fight. Perfect. And you can see right there, as soon as all of those options are gone for Frazier, George knows he can just tee him up with that big six and knock him down. Frazier, of course, gets back up. But you can see he's still wobbled. Now it's even harder for him to hold his base. And when he goes on autopilot, George is punishing him for all those things that he's done. Again, he's owning that level with those wide sweeping hooks to the body. And he's using the fact that he's owning that level to time Frazier and tee him up for these tighter hooks and uppercuts upstairs. Frazier doesn't feel comfortable pressuring in because Foreman pulls him through, and the writing's on the wall. Beautiful, beautiful. Pairing those uppercuts and hooks. Beautiful, beautiful, pairing those linear and those round attacks. And even the iron chin of Frazier can't stand up to the onslaught of Foreman. Frazier too brave for his own good, but he does survive the round, only to get quickly knocked out in the subsequent round. Supposedly, Customato on his deathbed made Mike Tyson promise not to fight. George Foreman was just coming out of retirement and beginning his comeback. I don't know what would have happened in that fight, but I do know that George Foreman is a pressure fighter's nightmare because of tactics that you've seen here. Because of these tactics make it very, very hard. If you're fighting a pressure fighter, as a puncher, you are the one in advantage on that kind of rock, paper, scissors of boxing archetypes, where outfighters usually beat punchers, punchers usually beat pressure fighters, and pressure fighters usually beat outfighters. And the reason, poor Frazier, I like Frazier, but you couldn't have built a guy in a lab who would do a better job of beating Frazier than George Foreman. The reason that pressure fighters struggle with punchers is because pressure fighters have to expose themselves to that power. They got to take a lot of risks to get at a guy and wear him down. And that's just a ton of exposure to power. It's a ton of risk to get hit if you're fighting somebody that can really crack like that, and somebody that's going to conserve their energy the way that a puncher usually does. And that's the fight. I'll die on the hill that Foreman would have beaten Tyson. I don't know if Foreman's a better boxer than Tyson from a career standpoint or a historical standpoint. You know, Tyson's got a lot of fans out there that are very voracious. But certainly we talk about styles make fights. George Foreman, I firmly believe, would have taken out Tyson. The evidence is on the wall. You look at all the small guys that he fought on his comeback as he was preparing to potentially challenge Tyson for the title. And you look at him fighting Frazier, talk about a legendary matchup. Frazier versus Tyson would be great. But again, I think George smokes both of them. As you guys have seen, it's an uphill battle for a pressure fighter dealing with a puncher. Hopefully you guys learned something today. You can take these tactics, whether you're a puncher or whether you're a pressure fighter, and you can try to weaponize them so that you can have success when you fight.